Hello and welcome to Deeply Curious. My name is Cody Jensen, and joining me in our New York City studio apartment is my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
This podcast is all about the things that we are curious about, and we tend to talk deeply about those things, whether trivial, whether meaningful. I don't know, whatever it is with our personalities, whenever we get together and bring something up that has interested us this week, we tend to, I don't know.
I like asking questions.
Yeah, we just like asking questions. We may not always come up with the answer, but the questions are there. The thoughts are brewing, and so
it's exciting.
It's exciting. That's the hence the name, Deeply Curious. But before we jump into today's discussion, I want to let you know that this podcast is supported by Audible. Audible is a audiobook platform where you can get all of your premium audiobooks to get your brains going. Get your brains thinking about all these curiosities.
Learn the things.
Yes, learn the things. Also, maybe sometimes just escape. Sometimes you just need to just let go.
Books are good for that.
Get into a story and find yourself at Hogwarts, you know. But if you were to want to tickle the brains, I would recommend Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson.
Yeah.
Fantastic biography. It's like, I don't know, it's probably like 5 years old now, but it is well worth your time. So intriguing. And 2, I would recommend The Power of Habit. I listened to that one as well, and I thought about it for a significant amount of time afterwards, and still sometimes comes up in conversation.
Yeah.
So many little tidbits in there that I love. So if you want to check out either of those books, or probably any book you could possibly think of, you can get a free audiobook if you've never signed up for Audible before by going to audible.deeplycurious.fm. Brand new URL for those who've been listening for a while.
Shout out.
We're no longer our old podcast.codyjensen.com. We are deeplycurious.fm. Hey, we're all professional up in here. So, again, if you want that free audiobook and you want to support this show, just go over to audible.deeplycurious.fm.
Yes.
Okay, jumping into the show. I'm going to bring my first thing that was very curious to me, and then the second part we'll get into Sarah's topic. So for me, mine is about the power of the human voice. So I was listening to a podcast this week. It's called Invisibilia. I think it's from NPR. And they started talking about voicemails and how, like thousands of other things, millennials have killed voicemail. And they were talking about how essentially nobody wants a voicemail anymore. We hate when we get voicemails, but how for certain people, specifically people who have lost loved ones, a voicemail can become their most prized possession.
Mm-hmm.
How just having that recording of that person, they could lose everything, but that recording is priceless.
Mm-hmm.
But then what really intrigued me was that they did a study. And so they took a group of girls and they broke them up into A, B, and control, or however, science is done.
Mm-hmm.
And they made all of them take a test that would stress them out. And so they didn't get into what the test was, but essentially it was just a really strenuous, hard test that would make their, stress chemicals or whatever can be measured rise. And then they had some of the girls text their moms, some of the girls call their moms and talk to them on the phone. And they tested them afterwards. Oh, and then the control group did nothing. They didn't talk to anybody. So they tested everybody's stress levels and oxytocin levels. And the girls who texted their moms had no change, the same as those who didn't talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
They were the exact same. But the girls who called their mom and their mom actually talked to them and they heard their voice, their oxytocin levels had increased significantly, and their stress levels were down.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't about the words that were being said. So the moms were obviously consoling their daughters over text messages, saying nice things, but that did not contribute to them actually feeling better at all.
Right.
It was only whenever they heard the voice of their mom and they actually were talking that their oxytocin levels increased and their stress levels came down. And so it was like the voice that made the difference. And then they also had another group receive a hug from their mom afterwards, and comparing the brain response of those that talked and those that were hugged, they had almost the exact same reaction. And so, like, talking on the phone is essentially like a audible hug.
Yeah.
It gives you the same release in the brain of oxytocin. So another thing, another one that was really interesting is they talked about another study that was done with coma patients, and they had voice recordings of the people that they knew played to coma patients, and the patients who were played voice recordings of their loved ones recovered faster than those who were not.
That's interesting.
It just made me think about like how much we avoid talking on the phone.
Yeah.
And how we actually get annoyed, like as millennials, I guess, or as young people, like we actually get like if somebody calls us that could have been a text message, we are annoyed. We're like, as soon when we, we're like, hello, like, why are you calling me? This could have been a text message.
Yeah. So for me, it's not so much that for me, it's more like anxiety about speaking on the phone. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much about actually talking on the phone with someone as it is like seeing the thing pop up and like I wasn't prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, I don't know what, Whereas like if I get a text message, I can just worry about it when I am prepared. It's not so much like I hate talking on the phone as it is like there's that like initial like anxiety of like, I didn't prepare for this.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about how maybe it comes from, I don't know, this like new age or just our mentalities now where we always have to be multitasking.
Right.
Whether that is like, actually productive or not is one thing, but we don't have to get into that. It's more so that we always feel like we have to be like multitasking and doing everything, but being on the phone is a solitary. Like you cannot do any. If you are going to be a contributing member of the conversation on the phone, then you cannot be doing anything else. You have to be actively engaged in that conversation in order for it to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I wonder if we feel that way because whenever we pick up the phone, we know we're going to have to stop doing everything that we're doing. We're going to have to pause the show. We're going to have to stop, whatever, and actually talk. Versus if we get a text message, you can, text message and keep the show going and, probably catch most of what's happening on the show.
Right.
Or, you could continue doing what you're doing and just reply like whenever you get a break every few minutes or whatever.
Right.
And so I was just thinking, I wonder if that contributes to it.
I'm sure it does. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I feel like maybe it also depends on who's got like what the phone conversation entails. Like, I don't want to speak to any person ever on the phone unless they're like a friend or a family, like if it's some sort of like business call or whatever, like please no, like just don't email me, I hate email, but then at least I can just get to it when I get to it. Like I don't want to answer the phone. And yeah, if I don't have the number in my phone, I don't want to answer it.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's different though. Because I'm the same way with a business call. I don't want to talk on the phone because I want a record of what was said.
Right.
So I want it in an email. That way I can always refer back to what was said, and there's no confusion.
Right.
Like for me, because I feel like on the phone I have to take notes, which means I'm not actually hearing the next thing you're saying.
Right.
And I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I think the point of this study is more so that like, with our family and those that we love, our friends and things like that, we neglect talking on the phone. Like we rarely ever talk on the phone to our friends. And then like our mothers may call and it's annoying. Like they're calling and like, Mom, just text me. Yeah. Come on. But what if we are actually doing that to our own detriment. Like we,
I mean, most things that we do are to our own detriment, aren't they?
like, and I'm definitely, I'm saying this to myself too, because I mean, I don't talk to my parents or anybody on the phone.
Yeah.
But when I was listening to this, I was like, man, I wonder if we've got it wrong. Like, I wonder if this whole like texting thing is actually contributing to higher anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
to deeper depression or whatever. And just to like not creating that whatever they called the healthy neural environment.
Yeah, right.
For our brains, like we are just more lonely.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is like, I don't want to like bother somebody. That's why I send a text message. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that also doesn't explain why we have this visceral reaction to receiving a phone call.
No, it doesn't. I don't know. That's hard for me to judge though, because for me, it's a lot of times the initial panic. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
But do you feel
I haven't really thought more outside of that.
Do you feel that panic even whenever it's like your best friend or your mom or somebody calling?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I haven't really thought much into that. Like, you know?
How do you, so I know how I feel, but how do you feel initially? Somebody calls, you're annoyed because they're calling. But then you actually talk to them and you have a conversation. How do you feel at the end?
Always better. It's just like how when you don't really want to go over to your friend's house for the party thing, but then you end up absolutely loving your evening and you've met some new friends or whatever. It's kind of the same. There's like that initial like dread, I would call it.
Right.
But then you like get into the swing of things and you like force yourself into, I don't know, conversation.
Yeah.
And then you always end up appreciating the conversation.
Yeah. I am the same way. Like I always, the phone's ringing. I'm like, ugh, hello, you know, and then but after, you know, it takes probably a couple minutes. Like I'm just like, for talking before finally
passive
like,
listening,
like something like changes in my brain, and then I'm an active, you know, member of the conversation, and then like I actually want to be talking, and I like go from sitting to the pacing, and I'm like just talking and like having a conversation, all this stuff, and then like we end the conversation, and I feel so much better. Like I feel more energized,
right? And
I feel loved, I guess,
right?
You know, and so essentially all of that to say, should we be talking on the phone more?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about like the way our lives are lived now, like nobody lives in the same place as like their best friends, like their people, like where they came from or where they went to school or whatever. And so you go like months without talking to like the person who knows you most, who knows you best. That can't be good.
Yeah.
You know? And like text messaging is obviously great. Like it's a great tool to have. I believe that. I mean, I wouldn't be in contact with a lot of people if it weren't for texting. But I mean, and I think there is something to say that like we shouldn't. It's kind of like the you know, like we're way over here and then we go all the way over to this side, and then eventually I think you settle in the middle somewhere. I think that's where we are with like phones in general. I think we had nothing and then we had everything, and now we're like, maybe everything's not so great. Like let's find a boundary here. Yeah,
they even mentioned the average American time spent texting versus on a phone call.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was essentially that the average American spends like 40 minutes a day texting and 6 minutes a day talking on the phone. But texting doesn't actually contribute to our mental neural networks. And so yeah, I mean, it's like what it's so much easier to text, but maybe again it's not actually helpful or something. I don't It's more so I'm trying to think of what is the actual question, or I don't know.
I think it's probably just like, well, I mean, I guess maybe this is my question. Like, why are we relying so much on non-communication communication? You know, like I feel so much like I'm so scared of like bothering people. Like I never want to be in the way. I never want to bother someone. So I feel so much better sending a DM on Instagram of like, oh, LOL, hey, look at this, in order to say hi because I miss you, instead of just saying hi, I miss you. You know, like there's something, which also that kind of gets into like the topic of conversation that I brought, but like there's that like, I don't know, I guess defense or whatever. Like I don't know. So I think, but the truth is that everybody wants communication. Everybody wants community. That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? So like, you just have to be the one willing, I guess, to do it first.
Yeah.
And like, even though talking on the phone is uncomfortable, like if you call and you keep calling your friend, like they're going to pick up and they're going to answer and you're going to have a great conversation and you're going to feel closer. And then eventually it won't be weird. Eventually it'll be like something you look forward to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. One thing that they did at the very end of that podcast is they played a montage of voicemails from listener submitted voicemails. And they were playing them, and it was like, you know, family members like calling and saying like, hey, whatever, you know, sorry I missed you or whatever. And then just, I don't know, it was like the quality, like the nostalgic, like kind of staticky quality of those recordings, and like how just, you know, that way that all parents leave voicemails, just that tone, I guess. And then there was this one that was a mom, and she was like saying, hey, I just called to say happy birthday. You're probably out celebrating right now. And then that kind of faded out, and then faded into a family that was singing happy birthday over the phone, obviously to whoever.
Yeah.
And like, I was walking down the street listening to this, and like I felt myself like tearing up a little bit, just like hearing these voice recordings, and just like that, you know, that you could just feel the love in the voices.
It reminds me of Lainey, the voicemails they put on. So they've had 2 voicemails that they put after a certain song on their EP and on their full-length album of the drummer's mom, the voicemail that she leaves, and it's just the sweetest thing I've ever heard in my life. Oh my gosh. So mom and so cute. Yeah.
And then
but it does make you happy. Like
right.
I don't even know her, you know, but it makes you feel good.
And then that made me think about, I wonder if this inherent human desire, this need to hear human voices, and essentially, you know how like our brains crave things that release feel good chemicals in our brain,
right?
Hearing, you know, having a voice and hearing a voice, and that communication, I guess, releases feel good chemicals. So I would, you know, obviously our brain desires that. I wonder if that has contributed to the rise of podcasting and, you know,
maybe
audio forms.
Well, there's a reason radio's never gone away, right? Like, we've had this conversation before about radio, about how it's just always been constant. But I can't remember if it was a podcast or something. Anyways, but like, it's like radio, we talk, audio will never go away.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think podcasts have been like taken a huge boom.
Right. It's just the new radio though.
It's the new radio. I also think podcasting, I feel like people view it as a way to learn, passive learning, like while they're doing other things.
But a lot of podcasts, yeah, there are some podcasts that are very scripted or very educational or things like that. But there are podcasts like ours right now, and a ton of others that are like very conversational podcasts that are literally just people talking to each other.
Right.
And yes, we listen because we are intrigued by the subject matter and the things, their personalities and the things that they say, that keeps us, wanting to listen. But I was thinking, I wonder if in part we do listen because it is like having a conversation.
It's comforting.
And it's comforting.
It's kind of like that conversation we had on one of our videos about like why people watch The Office, or why people watch like regular vlogs, right? There's like something like familiar and relatable, right, I guess, about it.
But that also made me think about that. Yes, there is that side, but then there's also just the side that it could, the voices that you're hearing are not those of loved ones. So does it actually contribute to those oxytocin levels the way that it would if like for our parents to be listening to this podcast right now, it probably affects them in a oxytocin
different
way than it would just, somebody who has never met us in person and they just are listening. I have no idea. I have no study to present that would back up that information in any way.
Right.
But then I also thought about that there's also the side of the multitasking thing that podcasting has also risen because it is something that we can do while doing other things. You don't need that full focal attention.
I do. That's why I don't listen to podcasts. Because I cannot listen to a thing and work or whatever at the same time. It's impossible. I tune out whatever I'm listening to.
Well,
I tune out words.
That depends on the type of work you do. You can't sit there, like, you have to do menial tasks.
No, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter for me. You don't have to believe that if you don't want to.
I mean, I'm just saying that for me, like, if I'm driving, washing dishes, walking, anything like that, I can be 100% engaged in the podcast.
The only time I've ever really like retained information from a podcast or actually like listened the entire time or didn't like halfway through go like, wait, what is the last 20 minutes of what I've been hearing, is when I've just been sitting and listening, doing nothing else, taking notes actually. Like it's a very like school setting. Like I have to be like visually like doing some sort of like note taking in order to remember or really hear what I'm listening
and
to.
That is possible. I mean, that could be how most people are, but we feel like we can multitask while listening to a podcast because it can keep going and we can still pay attention to get the gist of what is happening, but to actually retain the what is being said, to actually have it affect us in a way that we actually think deeper about that thing.
Right.
We need to actually be paying attention and not multitasking.
Right.
I don't know. So
leave more voicemails.
Yeah. Leave more voicemails. Save more voicemails. Call your mom. Call your dad. Call your loved ones.
Maybe I'll actually set up my voicemail now. That's how much I dislike talking on the phone. Is like I get so stressed out about even creating a voicemail. So there's that.
Yeah. After I listened to that podcast, I did have this like, maybe I should like call somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe we should call somebody. All
right.
Okay. Before we jump into your topic of discussion, which I see that you have brought some multimedia examples to go with yours, we'll just want to take a quick break and let you guys know that this podcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. And BetterHelp is an affordable private online counseling service with unlimited access to a licensed therapist. It's super simple to sign up. If you just go to betterhelp.com/Jensen, you fill out a short questionnaire, and then you're matched with a licensed therapist, and you can begin counseling as early as that same day. But what I love about BetterHelp is, all of that. But normal counseling can cost you $150 to $250 a session. And BetterHelp is as affordable as $35 a week. And you get unlimited access to your therapist over whether that's texting or FaceTime, whatever the medium is, you get unlimited access to your therapist. So if you want to try it out, you can go to betterhelp.com/Jensen. You have to be 18 or older to use the service, and it is a weekly counseling service, not a crisis hotline. So there's links in the show notes if you want to learn more, or again, just go to betterhelp.com/Jensen.
Yes.
Sarah, what do you got?
So I've actually been thinking about this a lot. And then this week happened, and I just thought, okay, it's a sign. I have to talk about it. So basically, the 1975 came out with a new song this week called Sincerity is Scary. And it's kind of all about how, like, being honest and real and vulnerable is not a thing. Like, we use all these defense mechanisms to be vulnerable, particularly on the internet, things like that. Kind of to, like, say, like, okay, here's how I feel, but please don't, like, label me, don't, like, judge me, right? So there's this video that Maddie Healy was talking in an interview with Zane Lowe, and it kind of talks about that. So I thought I would play that video, and then there's a quote that I wanted to share that is the same thing, and then we can dive into it.
Sincerity is Scary is about me trying to, like, denounce all of that postmodern, like, fear of, like, being real, you know, like, irony first, make sure you're ironic, because then you can't be judged on being a person. And I've become so aware of, like, the shtick that exists within my kind of lyrical narrative as well, because I obviously I love everything that I've done previously, but I now, as I get older, I see these kind of, like, defense mechanisms, whether they be like jokes, like being slightly sardonic, or like, oh, here's the big emotional bit of the song, but I'm not going to be really emotional. Do you know, all those kind of things? And I think on this record, it's slightly more, it's just a bit more open and a bit easier and, like, genuinely, like, sincere.
So that is just like a quick clip on, like, why he wrote the song, but the two main points that I wanted to kind of highlight were the make sure you're ironic so you can't be judged on being a person, and the idea of, like, so here's the big emotional part, but I'm not going to be emotional about it, you know, kind of these defense mechanisms that we use. And then the other thing is quite long. It's a quote from David Foster Wallace, who obviously loved words. So I'm going to try and, like, pare it down a little bit. So he's talking about like bad fiction, like writing bad fiction. Is that a thing? Or, like, if you're just being representative of your culture, is it okay to write bad fiction in this kind of, like, meta way? And he says, look, we'd probably, most of us, agree that these are dark times and stupid ones, but do we need fiction that does nothing but dramatize how dark and stupid everything is? In dark times, the definition of good art would seem to be art that locates and applies CPR to those elements of what's human and magical that still live and glow despite the time's darkness. Really good fiction could have as dark a worldview as it wished, but it'd find a way both to depict this world and to illuminate the possibilities for being alive and human in it. And then he says, postmodern irony and cynicisms become an end in itself, a measure of hip sophistication and literary savvy. Few artists dare to try to talk about ways of working toward redeeming what's wrong, because they'll look sentimental and naive to all the weary ironists. Irony's gone from liberating to enslaving. There's some great essay somewhere that has a line about irony being the song of the prisoner who's come to love his cage. The postmodern founders' patricidal work was great, but patricide produces orphans, and no amount of revelry can make up for the fact that writers my age have been literary orphans throughout our formative years. We enter a spiritual puberty where we snap to the fact that the great transcendent horror is loneliness, excluded engagement in the self. Once we've hit this age, we will now give or take anything, wear any mask, to fit, be part of, not be alone. The U.S. arts are our guide to inclusion, a how-to. We are shown how to fashion masks of ennui and jaded irony at a young age, where the face is fictile enough to assume the shape of whatever it wears. And then it's stuck there, the weary cynicism that saves us from gooey sentiment and unsophisticated naivety. A U.S. of modern A, where the state is not a team or a code, but a sort of sloppy intersection of desires and fears, where the only public consensus a boy must surrender to is the acknowledged primacy of straight line pursuing this flat and short-sighted idea of personal happiness. Which, like I said, is a lot of words, but summed up is saying, why are we using irony as a defense mechanism to shield our real emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been thinking about this a lot, just in my own personal way of being on the internet. And then I found those two things this week. Then I was like, okay, well, this is what I believe now, you know?
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to talk about that. I think maybe in particular I think Twitter is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I think like on Instagram, we more just like don't talk about bad things, not even in a humorous way.
Mm-hmm.
But like on Twitter, it's very ironic and very like, let me make this joke, or maybe not even a joke, but let me just say this so plainly, like he was saying, like Maddie was saying, the emotional bit without being emotional. Let me just say this so matter-of-factly that it catches you off guard, that we don't even have a chance to like discuss it in a real, true, vulnerable way. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean, do you think that like that's bad, or that we should even be like considering it?
So, well, first, like, what do you think of? Like, what are some examples of things that you think of whenever Maddie in that quote, it talks about, you know, shielding who we are through irony,
Right.
like.
I mean, I don't have any
examples?
like specific examples, but like if you just go on Twitter or whatever, you see like the LOL, this is my life, LOL, JK,
Mm-hmm.
but LOL.
Right.
You know, it's like the very ironic like sentence of like life sucks, LOL. You know? And that LOL is sort of the like equalizer. It like kind of like deflects, I guess, is the
diffuses.
word. Diffuses like the true heart of the sentiment. And I guess I'm just wondering why we feel like we can't be vulnerable online or even in real life. And I'm looking at it like I'm asking myself that question. Like, it's why I don't post very much, because I come up with, or I feel this thing and I like type it and then I'm like, but do people really want that? And then I just don't post it, you know? But like the only thing I ever actually appreciate is real, true honesty. And so like Melissa Broder is a really great example on Twitter. So sad today. Just like brutal honesty in the most refreshing way. Even if I don't always agree or whatever, I love that she will just put it all out there. And I mean, there's I don't know, there's something to be said about like the platform lends itself to certain things. So like Twitter is obviously very funny and sarcastic and whatever, but I just wonder why. I don't know. I think it kind of plays back into the conversation I'm having with myself too about how like social media can be very destructive.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, like, is there even a place on social media for that, for being like true, raw, vulnerable? And if there isn't, why?
But maybe social media is destructive because nobody is being true, raw, and vulnerable. Because the reason that social media is so destructive is because we are looking at the highlight reels of everybody else's life while we are living the behind the scenes.
Right.
And so it's like you scroll through Instagram and you're seeing everybody's like best photos they took ever, or the best photos they took that week, highly curated, which, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with, highly curating a Instagram feed, because, I mean, Instagram is a photo platform.
Right,
Like,
that's what it's
I
for.
understand. But how could it become more vulnerable? Like,
Right.
and or maybe maybe it's the user side more than it is
Well, I was going to say, why do
the
we...
consumer side, I guess.
Why do we feel like we can't? Like, why do we feel like we need to be ironic in our true feelings? Like, why... You know what I mean? What is it that, you know, we say this thing and then we're like, wait, but I'm not crazy or whatever. You know, like, can you... And there is, I think, maybe a fear of rejection there.
Yeah.
You know, like you're at your most vulnerable state. So obviously but like, why can't we just like say it? Why? That's what
Yeah.
That's kind of the things that I'm like.
Because the internet is it has become such a dangerous place to be vulnerable, to have a true opinion, because there are so many people hiding behind anonymity. So many people who, not even being anonymous, are just hateful and mean because they are behind a computer screen and they're not in front of you in real life, because they wouldn't say 98% of the things that they say online if they had to look you in the eyeball and tell you their very wrong opinion. And so because of the track record of social media, I mean, especially for a woman, like, to be vulnerable and put herself on the internet whenever there is, I mean, a unlimited supply of scum to come behind her and, you know, spew hate, like, to say like that wouldn't be incredibly difficult. Like, I mean, you basically haven't been on the internet. But as far as like hiding behind irony, what I was thinking about is obviously hipsters. Hipsters love to be ironic, and hipsters love to, I think, obviously you can't like put every hipster into one bucket, but just talking about, you know, I think that a lot of hipsterdom and being cooler than thou comes from a place of hiding vulnerabilities. And like choosing to put on this mask of, you know, being ironic in the fact that I'm ironically wearing this thing from my childhood, instead of saying like, I being vulnerable, being like, I loved Pokemon whenever I was a kid. And so now like, I still love it and I want to be a part of it. And so I'm not ironically, you know, I don't know, have this Pikachu phone case or whatever, you know, whatever that example is, that is like, it's like become this like hipster thing now, like to wear this like, you know, whatever it is, you know, ironically. But it's like, are you wearing it ironically to hide the fact that you actually do love that thing, that you actually you miss something of your childhood and you want to present that to the world, but you want to do it in a way that if somebody was to say, why do you have that stupid Pikachu phone case? You're like, you know, say some hipster, you know, ironic thing about how whatever, like.
But why do we feel that way? Like, why do we feel like we can't? I mean, I know why. I know the logic. Like, I know internet hate, comments, blah, blah. I understand. But, like, why do we feel like we can't, like, enjoy what we enjoy? Why do we feel like we can't be true and vulnerable in who we are? And it's been like that forever. It's been like that before the internet. I think, you know, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but David Foster Wallace, like, I don't understand why we choose to hide behind irony, or like why we can't create a space for people to be people. Like Maddie Healy said, like, why are we being judged for being a person? Like, just like you have whatever struggles you have, I have my own. And like, why can't we just be honest about it?
I mean, I think this comes back to the core of almost everything. And that is insecurity, because we find validation in other people and instead of ourself or in our creator, if that's your worldview. And whenever you try to find validation through the opinions of other humans, you will be left short every single time. Also, whenever you find your self-worth in the opinions of other people, that means that you think that they also find their self-worth in the opinions of you. And whenever you feel terrible about yourself because of the opinions of other people, you then hurt people,
Right.
you then put other people down for the things that they like because you're insecure in the fact that that you can't be into the things that you like.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm totally into Pokemon, and I hide that from everybody because whenever the few times that I tried to talk about it, I got a bunch of internet hate, or my mom or somebody put me down for liking this thing. And so now I feel like I can't actually share the fact that I like Pokemon. And so whenever I see somebody else sharing, even maybe it is like a direct one-to-one, that I see somebody else sharing the fact that they like it, and so I put them down because if I can't like it, they can't like it, subconsciously. Or they're into like some other thing that Yu-Gi-Oh, in the same genre, and so you hate it them for not growing up.
Yeah.
You need to grow up. Yu-Gi-Oh's for high or junior hires or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like we've had this conversation like probably in every podcast, but definitely in the last like few podcasts, and even in some of our videos, like just the thing about letting other people enjoy things,
right?
I think just all really stems from the fact that you're insecure in yourself.
Yeah, but yes, but it's not so much about letting other people enjoy things, although that is like, I guess maybe it's more about like sharing feelings.
Yeah.
Like, I think kind of, this kind of falls into it too. I'm like a huge proponent of just like letting people say what they want to say, and then
say what you need to say.
Yeah. I also, every time I've been thinking about this for a couple weeks, and so every time I sing, isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
What's that from?
Are you kidding?
Yes, I'm ironically kidding because I actually do know what you're talking about.
It's like rain.
Oh yeah.
On your wedding day.
Wow.
One of the
Alanis, are you here?
Anyways, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, a huge advocate of letting people say what they need to say. And like learning through that, like not holding people to what they said 3 years ago or whatever. But like understanding that like people change and evolve, and there's this kind of idea on the internet that like what you said is what you mean and what you believe forever. And that's not the case. And I think I don't know. I know a lot of people who like won't share their like opinions, I guess, because, we've seen it. Everybody has seen it. Some actor posted something on their Twitter 20 years ago before they were famous, and now it's dragging them through the dirt, So like maybe that's a thing too, is like we don't want to be judged permanently on what we're saying temporarily. But I'm a huge advocate for letting people like work through what they need to work through, because I know that that's how I work. Like I work through ideas and questions and thoughts by talking them out with somebody. And it's just that the somebody we have now is the internet. It's just a little different because we aren't hanging out with each other. So we're just going to like post it on Instagram and have a conversation about it. But that's scary because, 7 years from now, who knows what's going to happen with what you said. So maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like most people don't think about the future like in that way, as far as
I do.
Well, I mean like as far as saying something that's going to be misconstrued in 10 years. It's more so saying something that's going to be misconstrued right now.
Right.
And it's basically that comes from the fear of being misunderstood.
Right. So then we mask it with irony. So then we can be like, LOL.
Right.
I don't actually hate myself, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
but that's not healing at all. That's not like progressing. That's not growing.
I think that a lot of it comes from like not being able to be vulnerable in online senses, just because it's a very hard place to be vulnerable. Like it's hard enough to be vulnerable. I think that
flows into every aspect of our life now. Like it's hard to be vulnerable in art because where does art go? On the internet, It's hard to be vulnerable in relationships because where are relationships going? On the internet. Like everything is on the internet. So are we just getting worse at being vulnerable, or have we always been bad at it? And now it's just more evident. I don't know.
I think probably on a grand scale, I would assume that we are worse at being vulnerable as a whole. But then also, I think that some personalities are just predisposed to be vulnerable, and some are predisposed to not.
Right.
I mean, obviously, that is like one of our main differences.
Right.
Is that you are on the vulnerability scale. You're like peaking at 100, and the little meter is like shaking, versus
maybe some would argue it's a little too much.
Versus like me, I don't know where I am on the vulnerability scale, other than it's way lower than you.
Yeah.
You know?
Compared to me, it's non-existent.
Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't say that I have a fear of being vulnerable, though.
Right, but you're kind of a different case, though, as with everything, because I would say you don't have a fear of anything. Like, you don't have a fear of saying something and then it being, like, misunderstood. And do you mask your vulnerabilities with irony or some other defense mechanism? Do you just, like, here's an emotional thing that I'm going to say, but I'm not going to be emotional about it so that you can't be emotional with me? You know, like...
I don't know. I mean, I almost
don't don't think you're an emotional person. Like... You don't even really have those examples.
Right. And I also don't even fully grasp what it means to say something vulnerable and mask it behind irony.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, that's why I'm asking you for example, because I don't really...
Well, I think just like go on Twitter and you'll find plenty of examples. I don't have anything specific. I didn't know I needed a specific example. But I think just saying true things in a clever way instead of just like saying it truth. Because so there's, okay, I don't know if this is an example, or it's not an example, but there's another quote that might help you. Ian Thomas, my favorite poet. If you have not read any of his books, highly recommend. Ian's quote or poem is, "I've pretended to go mad in order to tell you the things I need to. I call it art, because art is the word we give to our feelings made public, and art doesn't worry anyone." So it's like this idea that like, oh, well, if I just like package it in this certain way, you won't judge me for it, even though we all feel it.
Okay, so based on that quote, are you saying that like Demi Lovato writing the song about drugs and all that is like
I mean, no, because I think that she was pretty plain in her lyrics, right? And that it's not about like, well, why can't we say feelings without having to sing them? Like that's not it at all. It's just like, why are we trying to package it in this way that like, okay, well, I'm going to tell you the truth of the feelings, but I'm going to like craft it in such a way that we don't have to be vulnerable with each other about it.
I mean, is it like hiding behind humor?
Yeah.
I mean, because I would say, I mean, I 100% do that. Like, yeah. I will make a joke of anything.
Yeah, it's like the same, or in the same, definitely the same genre. Like, it's just the idea that like we're hiding behind things in order to be able to tell somebody the truth of how we feel. Instead of just like, why can't we just say the truth as the truth instead of the truth as humor or the truth as irony? And I understand sometimes like art, that's the point, right? It like gets to things in a way that is disarming to you. Like you don't even realize that it's happening. But why can't we just say it?
I mean, I think I've already answered that. Because it's insecurity.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I think that...
I guess I just want to have this... it's just something I'm thinking about a lot in how I interact with people and on the internet and things like that. And so I don't know.
I mean, I think that if you are not confident in who you are, that means that you're not confident in what you feel. And if you aren't confident in your opinion or what you feel... then whenever you put it out there, like in you're typing it up in a tweet or whatever, then you are trying to find validation in what you feel through those that are going to like and retweet.
I don't know if that's true, because I don't think it's about confidence. That's the thing. I mean, maybe confidence is a factor, but it's more about like, can I tell you what I'm feeling without being judged? Like, can that be a conversation?
So then mostly it's that everybody is just way too judgmental for anybody to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I guess so.
And everybody is judgmental because they're not vulnerable with themselves. Because the way to show your invulnerability is to judge others for the same thing that you do.
Yeah.
It's like the biblical parable of the not pulling out the plank in your own eye before pointing out the speck in somebody else's.
Right.
It's like we all have, I mean, since literally when the Bible was written, people have been doing this.
Yeah.
Where they judge others for things that they have wrong in their own life that stick out even farther
Yeah.
than the speck in somebody else's eye. They have a freaking plank in their eye.
Yeah.
And they're pointing out the speck in somebody else's.
That's
and
true.
so, I mean, this is obviously just human nature.
Yeah.
That the things that are in us, our insecurities, our vulnerabilities, are the things that we judge hardest in other people.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if there's really any way to like fix it necessarily. I just want to have the conversation because I feel like, especially with all of the conversations that people are having about social media and the internet, and like I said, the internet is involved in everything, every piece of our lives. I just feel like it's worth reminding, you know?
Right.
Worth saying like, hey, maybe try to be real. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that can really come out of this is that, one, for us to keep that in mind, and, you know, basically it's self-awareness.
Right.
That we
end every podcast.
Right. It becomes like we have to be self-aware enough to realize that we are, you know, maybe judging other people harder than what we should be because of our own insecurities or, you know, whatever that is. And be willing to step outside of that and be vulnerable in an online capacity, or really just be vulnerable in general, you know, whether that's in person or online, without basically with just setting aside the fact that, yes, we may be judged. Yes, we may be ridiculed. Yes, we may be, you know,
misunderstood.
Right. Misunderstood. But the act of sharing is going to help or enlighten, or I don't know what it is. Like, essentially, that vocal minority that shows hate should not stop us from sharing something that could touch the lives in some small way of the silent majority of, you know, or maybe it is a minority too, where it's just like there are some people out there who are craving, who are striving to hear something real on the internet.
Right.
And maybe nobody's doing it because of what you're saying. And the takeaway, I guess, is for not only for us, but anybody who's listening who finds this, you know, intriguing as well, is like to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
To know that you are a small voice in a big world, but your voice could be amplified, I guess, like to somebody out there that needs to hear the realness of a struggle, because there is somebody out there that is feeling like they are the only person that feels this way, because they're scrolling through Instagram and online and all they see is all of these perfect bodies, these perfect lives, these, you know, whatever it is. And they don't feel like anybody would possibly understand the fact that they feel a certain way. Which I mean, I think goes back to the art thing. Like, that's why art can be so powerful.
Arguably why it is.
Right. Is because it's like we've talked about in the past, how that quote about art, how good art disturbs the comfortable and comforts the disturbed.
Right.
And that put it in the same way that, you know, the words of your tweet or the words of your Facebook post could in some part comfort the disturbed and also disturb the comfortable, and those are going to be the people that you know, show hate in the comments. But I don't know. I guess maybe I have no idea. Essentially, like what the takeaway is.
I just think we should just. I just want to be a person who is honest and truthful and vulnerable without irony. And I just think that we should encourage others to do that too.
I mean, do you do that now? I mean, do you?
No, I just don't post anything. I don't do anything out of irony online because I know that I'm doing it. Like, I'm very conscious of, which is, I think, why this quote from David Foster Wallace and from Maddie Healy is so intriguing to me, is because I very much feel it in the moment when I'm like writing a tweet and I'm like, I just wish I could say what I really want, and then I close it. That's pretty much what happens. So I'm like very selective in the things that in the true things that I post online. Mm-hmm. And I just wish and want to be less selective. Like, you know what I mean?
Do you think that you used to be more vulnerable online, but you have, because of comments and concerns, have pulled back?
Yes.
The reason I asked that was because I whenever you said that you don't post things, I remembered that you used to post more vulnerable things online, and we would get text messages and
people
phone
coming
calls
out of the woodwork
from, all sorts of people who'd be like, is Sarah okay? Sarah sounds depressed. Is Sarah like, whatever, like Sarah this, Sarah that. And it's like,
it bothered me.
Right. It really bothered you that people couldn't understand that just because everybody feels. Just ended at that. But the only thing that is posted online is the 10% of the best. And so if you post anything that is of the other parts of feels of life, then it's like, wait, is this a cry for help?
Yeah.
And I feel like that season, like, of you trying to be more vulnerable online, and then people like thinking that you were crying for help, stopped you from ever posting again. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely used to share like way more vulnerable things. I'll still share certain vulnerable things. Like, there are certain subjects that I haven't shied away from because I don't mind it. Like it doesn't feel vulnerable to me. To like, other people are like, oh my gosh, you're so vulnerable. I'm like, meh, whatever. Like,
if you knew what I really thought.
Exactly. Like, that's like the first layer. Wait till you get to layer 20, like that's kind of, so there are still certain things that I'll share, but for the most part, I've just quit sharing because there's this idea that you can't be vulnerable and you can't just like sit with someone in the vulnerability. Like, I don't need people to come out of the woodwork and ask me if I'm okay. I just want someone to be like, oh yeah, me too. Or like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you feel that way too. Like, thank you for saying that, like, that's it. Like, it's not So anyway, every time I like go to post something, I'm like, that's not really what I want, but I can't say what I want, so I close it. So I don't know. I just think I'm ready for some unfiltered feelings online. That's all.
So essentially what you feel is what every woman feels whenever she has a boyfriend and or husband, and she is vulnerable with said man, and man tries to fix thing.
Yes. Yeah, don't fix it for me. Just like be there. It's fine.
And, all you want to hear is, I'm like, I hear you.
Yeah.
Or I feel that sometimes too.
Yeah.
Or, anything that is not fixing it.
Yeah. Or that's, it sounds weird because it's not, I understand that like people coming out of the woodwork is out of concern and like it comes from a good place. So I know that sounds odd, but I don't know. It's just like this weird thing. Or like people will be like, you need to be happier. Like, people have told me that. I'm like, that's not how that works though. Like, so I don't know.
I think that, not well with you, yes, but also I think that's a burden on all women that like in the society that has been set up. I have
absolutely been told way too many times that I look prettier when I smile, which really just makes me, never mind. It doesn't matter.
It's like, okay. before you say anything, think, if this person was a man, would I still say that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then don't.
And then don't. Yeah. I don't know. I just think vulnerability online. I think vulnerability in general. I'm craving vulnerability maybe from other people. And I think probably most other people are too. They just don't know it.
So being vulnerable, I suppose. What do you think in my life I am not sharing that I should be sharing, like, because I'm not being vulnerable enough?
That's a hard question. That's the thing, though. I don't think that you're not sharing things. I don't know. Do you have emotions?
Yeah.
I just mean you're very even, very steady.
I have emotions, but my emotions are in the middle of the scale. They vary by a factor of 10 to 20.
Less than that, probably. That's what I'm saying. Like, it'd be hard for me to answer that, like, right now, because I don't know. Because you're so steady that... I also don't think that everybody should share vulnerability. You know, like, you... Aside from, like, you take photo series and you do the collage or whatever. You obviously upload videos. But you're not, like, a super, like... social media person. You're not like on it all the time and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's not how you communicate, things like that. So it really, I don't think that there's anything necessarily that you should be more vulnerable online. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, everybody get online and share their feelings. Like, I mean, yes, but no, if you don't want to, don't. Just like, why the people who do, let's let them do it. I don't know.
So again, it goes back to just let people enjoy things.
I guess so. And stop feeling like you need to mask your feelings or your pain with something more. It's like the a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Right? It's like, quit feeling like you have to mask your pain with this something that'll make it easier for people to swallow. Like, just share. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions, but...
Are you sharing all of them right now, or are you masking some of them?
I'm not masking anything right now. I just don't know what else to say. I don't know. I just know that I am very, in the last maybe month, like, been thinking about it a lot and just, like, really craving, like, truth and vulnerability with no predispositions, no fluff. And it's hard to find. It's really, really difficult to find. You can find it in books, I guess, and maybe in some movies and obviously music. But, like, with people.
Right. It's
easier. People who you are in contact with, it's hard to find.
It's easier to find vulnerability in mediums where the feedback loop is very long.
Yeah.
So, meaning that in a song, a movie, a book, that piece is out there, but for you to actually give your feedback to the person who created that is really long.
Right. It's difficult.
It's difficult to do that. Like, if you wanted to give your opinion to Matty Healy about that song that he wrote, you'd have to, at him on all the socials or whatever, and then hope that he saw it.
Right.
Because, he's
not going to.
He's probably not going to.
Right.
And then obviously writers get like emails and hate mail and all that type of stuff. But again, the likelihood of maybe them seeing that is whatever, depending on, how new or like well known that author is.
Right.
But like, so anyways, just saying that the feedback loop is really long on those mediums. But if you were to tweet, it's instant. Somebody within 6 seconds can misunderstand you and say, I want to X-rated explicit.
In, you only have 280 characters to get your point across. That's really hard. I don't know. I just think we should be nice. That's all.
If it sums up, I think that actually does sum up all of your opinions and everything that really triggers you is that everyone just needs to be nice.
I very much come to the defense of people, whether they're in the wrong or not. And, like, it's always Well, hold on. Let's look at it this way, though,
Right.
and then, like, determine. Like, you can't just assume and
Right.
whatever. Very much come to the defense of
Yeah.
people.
Well, as we wrap up the podcast, I'll say an example of that is yesterday I said something negative about a music group's new album that that Sarah doesn't even care about.
No, that's strong.
Well,
I
you
do
essentially
care.
you care the minimum amount.
They are not somebody I listen to on a very regular basis.
Or
No, I have listened. Thank you very much.
okay.
But I don't
anyways.
listen on a regular basis.
Anyways, the point is, I said something negative about a music group that Sarah occasionally listens to.
Yeah.
And she immediately came to their defense that I can't have that opinion unless I listen to the entire album and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it's true.
and like, it was immediate defensive against something that she occasionally listens to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even like it was her favorite band, which I totally would understand. But
right,
it's like,
but it's not.
it's just like something that like, oh yeah, I've listened to that.
Yeah. But you can't judge what their art until you've listened to all of it. And then you can make a informed decision. Also, a good example is the movie Call Me By Your Name. You hated that movie. And I was we got in a like actual argument about it. I was so upset at how just the blatant disregard that you had for that movie. You were like, it was filmed so cheap, blah, 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 whatever you said. I don't even remember. And I was like, we will not. And I was like, you cannot have that opinion. That is not allowed. It's like, here's why it was beautiful.
I mean, after the movie, I didn't say anything. And just because I already knew.
Yeah.
But Sarah was like, so what'd you think? And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just lie?
No, but you can just like not be so blunt about it.
But then that's giving you my truth with a spoonful of sugar.
Well, okay, but that's a little bit different.
Is it?
Because I had already told you how much I loved it. Anyways, point is, I just come to the defense of everyone. That's like my immediate, that's just my natural go-to. Like, okay, I'm going to defend them first, and then we can disagree about it. I may even not care.
Right.
That's honestly the truth. I may not even feel that strongly
Whereas-
about the opposing side, but I'm definitely going to defend them.
Right. Whereas I typically, a lot of times, I will play the devil's advocate. Sarah always plays the angel's advocate. Even if she has the devil's opinion on the thing. If you are attacking it, she'll
Yeah.
defend.
Like, yeah. Yes, that's true. Anyways.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Deeply Curious. Hopefully that intrigued your brains and
Encourages
tickled
you to
the
be
neurons.
nice.
Yeah. Be nice, be vulnerable, call your mom.
Yeah.
Also, get yourself a free audiobook by going to audible.deeplycurious.fm.
Yes.
Also, just check out deeplycurious.fm if you want to check out all the back episodes of Deeply Curious. And then you can also check out the betterhelp.com/Jensen free trial by going to betterhelp.com/Jensen, or all the links are in the show notes. Check it out. We'll be back next week for another show. See you later.
Bye.